Rain dripped through the cracked roof. Inside the cramped room of a relief center about to close, a 10-year-old girl sat quietly by the window, patiently writing 15 letters to 15 wealthy CEOs, pleading for a small miracle to save the only place she called home. The next morning, 15 luxury cars stopped in front of the center, and what happened after would bring anyone to tears. Before we dive deeper into this story, let us know where you're watching from, and don't forget to hype and subscribe for more heartwarming stories every day. The rain came through the ceiling again that Tuesday morning. Amina watched the drops fall into the old coffee can placed in the corner of the dormitory. Plop, plop, plop. The sound had become so familiar that the other children didn't even wake up anymore. She was 10 years old, and this place, the New Dawn Relief Center, was the only home she could remember. The building sat on the edge of town where the pavement cracked and gave way to dirt roads. It wasn't much to look at. Peeling paint, windows that rattled when trucks passed, but inside, there were 23 children who called it home, and Miss Caroline who held it all together with hope and stubbornness. Amina slipped out of bed and walked barefoot down the hallway. The floorboards creaked under her feet. She could hear Miss Caroline's voice coming from the office, that small room with the metal desk and the filing cabinet that never closed all the way. She wasn't supposed to eavesdrop, but something in Miss Caroline's voice made her stop. "I don't know what else to do," Miss Caroline was saying into the phone. Her voice cracked. "We're 3 months behind on rent. The city's threatening to shut us down by the end of the year." Amina pressed herself against the wall, her heart beating fast. "I've called everyone I know," Miss Caroline continued. "The foundations, the churches, the local businesses, everyone stretched thin." There was a long silence. Then Miss Caroline said quietly, "I just don't know how to tell the children." Amina walked away before she could hear more. Her chest felt tight, like someone was squeezing it. She went to the common room where the morning light was just starting to come through the dirty windows. That's when she saw it. There was a stack of old magazines on the reading table, donations from the library downtown. Most of them were months old, some even years. Amina had looked through them 100 times, but that morning, one caught her eye. The cover was wrinkled and coffee-stained, but the headline was clear: America's Most Powerful CEOs, 15 Leaders Shaping the Future. She picked it up and flipped through the pages until she found the article. 15 faces stared back at her. Men and women in expensive clothes, standing in front of tall buildings and company headquarters. Beneath each photo was a name, their company, and a short description of what they'd built. Amina sat down on the worn couch and studied each face carefully. She didn't know anything about business or stocks or tech companies, but she knew about people. She knew that Mr. Davis from the corner store sometimes let her take an extra apple when he thought no one was looking. She knew that Mrs. Chen from the laundromat always smiled when she saw the New Dawn kids, even on her tired days. Maybe these CEOs were just people too. The idea came to her slowly, like dawn breaking. If each of these 15 people gave just a little, maybe it would be enough. Maybe Miss Caroline wouldn't have to cry anymore. Maybe the New Dawn wouldn't have to close. She took the magazine to her bed and hid it under her pillow. That night, after dinner and chores and homework, while the other children played cards in the common room, Amina sat at the small desk in the corner with a stack of papers she'd borrowed from Miss Caroline's office. The paper was mismatched, some lined, some plain, some with letterhead from organizations that didn't exist anymore. She picked up a pencil and began to write. "Dear Sir or Madam," she paused. That sounded too formal, like something from a book. She erased it and started again. "Dear Mr. Harrison, my name is Amina. I am 10 years old and I live at the New Dawn Relief Center. I don't know if you'll read this letter, but I wanted to write to you anyway." She chewed on the end of her pencil, thinking, "I saw your picture in a magazine. You look like someone who works very hard. Miss Caroline works very hard too. She takes care of 23 kids here, and she never gets tired of smiling even when I know she wants to cry. The roof leaks when it rains. We put cans on the floor to catch the water. Sometimes I think about what it would be like to live in a house where you don't have to do that. I bet you don't have to put cans on your floor. I'm not asking for money from me. I just thought maybe if you knew about us, you might want to help. Miss Caroline says we might have to close. I don't know where everyone would go if that happens. If you were ever young and needed help, maybe you remember what that feels like. Thank you for reading this. Sincerely, Amina. She read it over 3 times. It wasn't fancy. It probably wasn't what you were supposed to write to a CEO. But it was true, and that was all she knew how to be. She folded the letter and put it in an envelope she'd found in the recycling bin. She copied the business address from the magazine in her neatest handwriting. Then she wrote another letter, and another. It took her 3 nights to write all 15. Each one was a little different, because each person was different. She told them about Marcus, who wanted to be an engineer. About little Sophie, who was only 4 and still afraid of the dark. About Isaiah, who could draw anything you asked him to, even though he only had 3 crayons. She didn't tell them how much money they needed. She didn't really know. She just told them about the life inside these walls, the small, ordinary, precious life that was about to disappear. On Friday morning, before anyone else was awake, Amina took the letters and walked 6 blocks to the post office. She'd been saving the coins she found, under couch cushions, on sidewalks, in the laundry room. She counted them out carefully at the counter. 15 stamps, please, she told the postal worker, a middle-aged woman with reading glasses on a chain. The woman looked at the pile of coins, then at Amina's serious face, then at the 15 envelopes clutched in the girl's hand. That's a lot of letters, she said, but not unkindly. They're important, Amina replied. The woman counted out the stamps, and helped Amina stick them on. Then Amina dropped each envelope into the mail slot, one by one, and made a wish she didn't say out loud. She walked back to New Dawn as the sun was coming up, her hands empty but her heart strangely full. Miss Caroline was in the kitchen making oatmeal when Amina got back. "Where'd you go, sweetheart?" she asked. "Just for a walk," Amina said. "Needed some air." Caroline studied her for a moment. She'd noticed things over the past week, envelopes missing from the recycling bin, Amina asking casual questions about how to address mail to businesses, the girl staying up late writing something she quickly hid when anyone walked by. But Caroline had learned long ago that children at New Dawn needed their secrets, their small acts of control in lives that often felt beyond their control. So she simply smiled. "Well, you're just in time to help me with breakfast," Caroline said. Amina tied on an apron and started setting out bowls. She didn't tell anyone about the letters. It felt like something that needed to be kept quiet, like a seed you plant in the ground. You don't dig it up every day to see if it's growing. You just water it and wait. The weeks passed. October turned to November. The weather got colder, and the broken heater in the north wing meant everyone had to sleep in the main dormitory, crowded together for warmth. Amina checked the mail every day, but there was never anything for her. Just bills and donation requests and catalogs nobody wanted. She tried not to be disappointed. She'd known it was a long shot. These were important people with important lives. Why would they read a letter from a girl they'd never met? By Thanksgiving she'd almost given up. And then on a cold Monday morning in early December, a black car pulled up in front of New Dawn. Nathan Hale had not planned to come here. The letter had arrived at his office 3 weeks ago, mixed in with the usual stack of correspondence his assistant sorted through. Investor reports, meeting requests, charity solicitations by the dozen. His assistant, Monica, screened everything. She knew what needed his attention, and what could be filed away or politely declined. The letter should have been declined. It had all the markings of the hundreds of requests they received each month, handwritten envelope, no company letterhead, a return address from a non-profit, but Monica had a system. She opened every piece of mail, even the obvious rejections, just to make sure they weren't missing something important. And when she opened this one, something made her pause. It was the handwriting, so careful, so young. She read the first paragraph, and felt something catch in her throat. Monica had worked for Nathan Hale for 17 years. She knew him to be brilliant, demanding and almost completely detached from anything that didn't directly relate to building his company. She'd watched him refuse countless charitable requests, insisting they all go through the proper foundation channels. But she also knew something most people didn't. She knew about the anniversary, about the boy named Eli, about the sadness that settled over Nathan every year in late November, a sadness he never acknowledged or explained. The letter had arrived on a Tuesday, the anniversary of Eli's death. Monica left it on his desk. Nathan almost threw it away. He picked it up 3 times that day, ready to toss it in the recycling, to tell Monica to handle it through the normal channels. But something made him open it. Maybe it was the way his name was written, each letter formed with obvious care. Maybe it was because it was Tuesday, and Eli's face was already in his mind. Maybe it was nothing at all, just chance. He unfolded the letter and read, "Dear Mr. Hale, my name is Amina." He read it twice, then a third time. When he got to the line, "If you were ever young and needed help, maybe you remember what that feels like," he stopped. His office was silent, 43 floors above the city, with floor-to-ceiling windows that made him feel like he was floating above everything. In here the world was clean, ordered, profitable, but that line pulled him back to a different place. A different time. Riverside Home for Boys. The drafty building with the cracked windows, the smell of boiled cabbage and industrial soap. The other boys who cycled in and out, some adopted, some aged out, some just disappeared. And Eli with his crooked smile and his cough that never went away. Eli who taught Nathan how to play chess with pieces they made from folded paper. Eli who died when they were both 12, in a hospital bed, because the home couldn't afford the medicine that might have saved him. Nathan had gotten out, scholarship to state school, then MIT, then a startup that became an empire. He'd spent 30 years building walls between himself and that childhood, walls made of money and success, and carefully controlled distance. He hadn't thought about Eli in years. Or rather, he thought about him once a year on this Tuesday in November, and then locked the memory away again. Now, holding this letter from a girl named Amina, he couldn't think about anything else. He picked up his phone and called Monica. "That letter from the girl at the relief center," he said. "Get me the address, sir, the full address, and clear my schedule for tomorrow afternoon. Mr. Hale, you have the board meeting. Move it." There was a pause. In 17 years Monica had never heard him cancel a board meeting. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. He drove himself. No driver, no security, no assistant. Just him in a car, he kept for the rare occasions he wanted to be alone, heading out of the city toward an address that didn't appear in any of his usual databases. The neighborhoods changed as he drove. The tall buildings gave way to smaller ones. The clean streets became cracked. The shops with designer names were replaced by bodegas and check-cashing places, and churches with signs in multiple languages. He found New Dawn on a narrow street, where chain-link fences separated tiny yards. The building was worse than he'd imagined. Worse than Riverside had been. The kind of place that made you understand, immediately, that no one with power or money ever came here. Nathan sat in his car for a long moment, hands on the steering wheel. He could leave, wire a donation through his foundation, let the professionals handle it. That was what he always did. But Eli's face was in his mind, and Amina's words were in his chest, like something lodged near his heart. If you were ever young and needed help, maybe you remember what that feels like. He got out of the car. The front door was unlocked. He stepped into a narrow hallway that smelled like cleaning products and something cooking. The walls were covered with children's drawings, held up with tape that was turning yellow. A woman appeared from a side room. She was maybe 50, with graying hair pulled back in a ponytail, and tired eyes that still managed to smile. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her voice friendly but cautious. She didn't recognize this man in the expensive suit. "I'm looking for Amina," Nathan said. The woman's smile became more guarded. "May I ask why? Are you from social services?" "No, I'm not. My name is Nathan Hale. I received a letter from her." Caroline's expression shifted from cautious to confused. "A letter? I don't understand. Amina doesn't..." She trailed off, realization slowly dawning on her face. The girl had been writing something. Caroline had noticed the recycled envelopes disappearing from the bin. The way Amina had asked about stamps. The early morning walk to the post office that Amina thought no one knew about. "She wrote to you?" Caroline asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Actually wrote to you? And you came?" I did. Caroline's hand went to her mouth, tears suddenly filling her eyes. Oh my God. She really did it. I thought I saw her writing something weeks ago, but I didn't think. She wiped her eyes quickly, almost embarrassed by the emotion. I'm sorry. I'm Caroline. I run this place. She extended her hand and Nathan shook it. Is she here? Nathan asked gently. Caroline nodded, still looking stunned. She's in class. We have a tutor who comes 3 times a week. She studied Nathan's face, as if trying to understand why someone like him would actually drive out here. I didn't know she'd written to anyone. She never told me. That girl. Caroline shook her head with a mixture of pride and disbelief. She keeps so much inside, always trying to solve problems herself. Can I see her? Caroline hesitated for just a moment, then nodded. Follow me. She led him down another hallway to a room that served as a makeshift classroom. 8 children sat at mismatched desks while an elderly man wrote math problems on a whiteboard that had seen better days. Mr. Peters, Caroline said softly from the doorway. Could I borrow Amina for a moment? A girl looked up from the back row. She was small for 10, with dark eyes and hair pulled into 2 braids. She wore a sweater that was slightly too big and shoes that had been repaired with duct tape. She saw Nathan and her eyes went wide. It's okay, sweetheart, Caroline said. This gentleman wants to talk to you. Amina stood slowly and walked to the door. In the hallway, she looked up at Nathan with an expression he couldn't quite read. Not fear, more like careful hope mixed with disbelief. You're Mr. Hale, she said quietly. I am. You got my letter. I did. She bit her lip. Are you mad I wrote to you? The question hit him harder than it should have. No, he said. I'm not mad. Did your secretary throw it away? Almost, but she didn't. Why not? Nathan knelt down so he was at her eye level, because she could tell it was important, and she was right. They stood there in the hallway, this CEO and this child, Caroline watching from a few feet away, and for a moment no one knew what to say. Finally Nathan asked, Can you show me around? Amina nodded. She took him through the building, pointing out everything with a matter-of-fact pride that broke his heart. The common room where they did homework and played games. The kitchen where Miss Caroline made meals stretch further than they should. The dormitory where the rain came through the ceiling. We put cans there, Amina said, pointing. It's not so bad, you get used to the sound. Nathan looked at the stained ceiling, the crowded beds, the toys that had been loved by too many hands. Caroline stood in the doorway, seeing her home through this stranger's eyes, feeling the weight of its inadequacy. You wrote me about Marcus, Nathan said. The one who wants to be an engineer. Amina's face lit up. You remember that? I remember all of it. He's probably outside. He likes to take things apart and put them back together. Miss Caroline gave him an old radio last week and he's been working on it every day. Can I meet him? They went outside to a small concrete yard, where a thin boy of about 13 was hunched over a radio, using a screwdriver that was too big for his hand. Marcus, Amina called. Someone wants to meet you. The boy looked up, saw Nathan in his expensive suit, and immediately seemed like he wanted to disappear. It's okay, Nathan said, kneeling down to the boy's level. I heard you like to fix things. Marcus nodded, not quite looking at him. What's wrong with the radio? Battery terminals corroded. Marcus mumbled. And I think the speaker's blown. Can you fix it? Marcus shrugged. If I had the right parts maybe. Nathan looked at the radio, at the boy's careful hands, at the concentration in his young face. He saw himself 30 years ago, taking apart a computer in the Riverside Home Library, the one computer they had for 50 boys, trying to understand how it worked. What if I help you? Nathan asked. Marcus finally looked at him, surprised. You know about radios. I know about circuits, same basic principles. They worked on the radio together for an hour. Nathan's $1,000 suit got dirty from kneeling on the concrete, but he didn't notice. Other children started to gather around, curious about the stranger in their yard. Amina introduced him simply as Mr. Hale, who got my letter. Caroline brought out lemonade made from powder mix. Nathan sat on the steps with these children, drinking from a plastic cup, and tried to remember the last time he'd felt this present in a moment. "Why did you really come?" Amina asked, sitting beside him. He thought about how to answer. He could tell her about the foundation, about proper channels, about how this wasn't the way things were usually done. But she'd been honest with him in her letter. The least he could do was return that honesty. "Because you reminded me of someone," he said. "A friend I had when I was young. His name was Eli. Is he still your friend?" "He died a long time ago." "I'm sorry," Amina said softly. Then after a moment, "Is that why you came, because you miss him?" Nathan nodded slowly. "I think maybe I've been missing him for a very long time, but I'd forgotten how to remember, if that makes sense." "It makes sense," Amina said. She was quiet for a moment, swinging her feet. "Miss Caroline says when people die, they leave little pieces of themselves in the people who loved them, so they're never really all the way gone." Miss Caroline sounds like a wise woman. "She is." Amina looked at him seriously. "Are you going to help us?" "Yes, because of my letter, because of your letter, and because this place shouldn't have to close." Amina smiled then, really smiled, and Nathan felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been locked for so long he'd forgotten it was there. He stayed at New Dawn until sunset. He helped Marcus with the radio. He listened to little Sophie read from a picture book, stumbling over words. He played a strange version of basketball with some of the older kids in the yard, using a hoop with no net and a ball that barely held air. When he finally left, he shook Caroline's hand and promised her, "You'll hear from me tomorrow." In his car driving back to the city as the sky turned dark, Nathan made a series of phone calls, to his lawyer, to his accountant, to Monica, who he knew would still be at the office. "I need you to set up an immediate fund transfer," he told her. "And I need you to find contractors, good ones, people who can work fast." "What's this for, sir?" "I'm going to save a building," he said. But that wasn't quite right. The building was just brick and wood. What he was really going to do was harder and more important than that. He was going to remember how to be human again. 3 weeks after Nathan Hale's first visit to New Dawn, a photographer named Jack Torres sat in his car outside a downtown apartment building, drinking cold coffee and questioning his life choices. He'd been a celebrity photographer for 12 years, long enough to know every trick, every angle, every way to catch a famous person in a moment they didn't want caught. It paid well, it paid very well, but lately Jack had been wondering if the money was worth the feeling he got in his stomach when he looked at his work. Today's assignment was supposed to be simple: follow Nathan Hale. His client, a gossip website with millions of followers, had a tip that the notoriously private tech CEO was seeing someone. They wanted photos, proof, the story. Jack had been following Hale for 3 days and had seen exactly nothing interesting. Office to home, home to office. One dinner alone at an expensive restaurant where Hale barely touched his food. But this morning, something changed. Instead of heading to Hale Technologies, Nathan Hale got in his car, the unmarked one he drove himself, and headed out of the city. Jack followed at a distance, his camera ready on the passenger seat. They drove for 40 minutes, through neighborhoods that got progressively poorer, until Hale pulled up in front of a rundown building with a small sign, New Dawn Relief Center. Jack parked down the street, and watched through his telephoto lens. Hale got out carrying bags, several of them, from a hardware store. He walked to the door like he'd been there before, like he belonged. A woman met him at the entrance. They spoke briefly, then disappeared inside. Jack waited. This was the part of his job he'd gotten good at. The waiting. He scrolled through his phone, checked his email, and kept one eye on the building. 30 minutes later, Hale emerged. Not alone this time. He was with a group of children, maybe 10 or 12 of them, all different ages. They were carrying painting supplies and drop cloths. Jack raised his camera and started shooting. Through the lens, he watched Nathan Hale, CEO of a company worth billions, help children spread plastic sheets on the ground. Watched him open paint cans, watched him roll up his sleeves and hand out brushes. A small girl with braids showed Hale something on a piece of paper. It looked like a drawing or a plan. Hale knelt down to her level, studying it seriously, nodding. Then they started painting. The exterior wall of the building, which had been a dingy beige, began to transform. The children painted with more enthusiasm than skill,
getting as much paint on themselves as on the wall. Hale painted right alongside them, laughing when a boy accidentally splattered his shirt. Jack kept shooting. This wasn't what he'd been sent to find, but his instincts, the same ones that had made him good at this job, told him it was something. Around lunchtime, more people arrived. A van from a local restaurant pulled up and volunteers started unloading food. Real food, not charity-grade bulk items, but good food. Someone had paid for this. Jack watched Hale eat lunch sitting on the ground with the children. A paper plate balanced on his knees. No security, no assistants, no entourage. Just him, in jeans and a paint-stained shirt, listening to a teenage boy talk with animated hand gestures. This was wrong. Not wrong in a bad way, but wrong according to everything Jack knew about Nathan Hale. The man was famously cold, famously private, famously uninterested in anything except building his tech empire. The business press called him the Ice King. There were entire articles about his lack of public charitable giving, his refusal to sign the giving pledge, his single-minded focus on profit. This man, sitting in the dirt, laughing with homeless kids, that man didn't match the story. Jack lowered his camera and just watched. By late afternoon, the wall was finished. It was a riot of color, blue and yellow and green, with flowers and stars and one very wobbly cat that someone had painted near the door. It was messy and imperfect and beautiful. The children stood back to admire their work. The small girl with braids hugged Hale around his waist. He looked startled for a moment, then his hand came up to rest on her head, gentle. Jack took one last photo. He sat in his car as the sun began to set, looking through the images on his camera screen. He had over 200 shots, more than enough for the story his client wanted. But which story was it? Tech CEO's secret romance, caught volunteering at orphanage as cover. No, that wasn't it. Even Jack, who'd sold his fair share of twisted narratives, couldn't look at these images and see deception. What he saw was something else entirely, something that might actually matter. He scrolled to one particular photo, Nathan Hale kneeling in front of a little girl, looking at a piece of paper she held, the concentration on his face, the hope on hers. Behind them, the half-painted wall, and the other children working together. Jack sat there for a long time, staring at that image. Then he made a decision that would change everything.
He didn't upload it to his professional accounts. Those were for gossip, for scandal, for the kind of content that got clicks but left him feeling empty. Instead, he uploaded the photo to his personal Twitter account, the one he barely used, the one with only a few hundred followers, mostly family and old college friends. He typed Nathan Hale, Hale Technologies CEO spending his Wednesday at the New Dawn Relief Center. No cameras, no press, just showing up. He added the photo and hit send. Then he sent the same image to a journalist friend who worked for a local paper. Someone who wrote real stories about real people. Someone who might understand what this meant. Then he drove home, cooked dinner, and tried not to think about what he'd done. The next morning, his phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The photo hadn't just been retweeted by his few hundred followers. His journalist friend had written a short article for the local paper's website. That article had been picked up by a non-profit advocacy blogger with a large following. That blogger had shared it with her network. Within hours, it was on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, 10,000 retweets. Then 50,000. By noon it was over 200,000. Major news outlets started calling. Local TV stations, national networks, business publications, tech blogs. Everyone wanted to know, is this real? Is Nathan Hale really volunteering at a children's home? Jack confirmed it was real and provided no other comment. He ignored the dozens of requests for more photos, for interviews, for the full story. But he watched what was happening online. One tech journalist with 1 million Twitter followers had written a thread. Remember when we all called Nathan Hale the Ice King? Turns out he's been quietly helping this children's home. No PR team, no press release, just helping. What else don't we know? A parenting blogger had shared the photo with the caption, "This is what real wealth looks like. Not mansions, not yachts. Using your resources to help kids who need it." Someone, Jack never learned who, managed to get a photo of Amina's letter. It was slightly blurry, like it had been photographed through glass or plastic protective covering, but the words were clear enough to read. "Dear Mr. Hale, my name is Amina. I am 10 years old." That image went viral even faster than Jack's photo. The internet, which could be vicious and cruel, suddenly turned soft. People started sharing their own stories. Teachers who'd helped them, neighbors who'd bought them school supplies, strangers who'd shown kindness when they needed it most. Someone created #letters of hope, encouraging people to share times they'd reached out for help and someone had responded. A local news station sent a reporter to New Dawn. Caroline, overwhelmed and protective of the children, gave a brief interview on the front steps. "We received a letter asking for help," she said carefully, not naming Amina. "And someone answered, that's all. We're grateful and we hope people remember that there are children like ours all over this country who need help." The reporter asked if they could interview some of the children. Caroline politely but firmly declined. The story ran that evening. Within an hour, donations started pouring into New Dawn through their website. Small amounts, mostly $10, $20, from ordinary people who'd been moved by the story. But the real impact was something else entirely. In offices across the country, 14 CEOs were reading the news, looking at the photo of Nathan Hale and remembering something they'd forgotten. Week 1, the first 4 in Manhattan. Rebecca Chen sat in her office on a Thursday morning, her second cup of coffee growing cold as she scrolled through her phone. The photo of Nathan Hale was everywhere. Her executive team had even mentioned it in their meeting that morning. "Did you see this? The Ice King has a heart after all." Rebecca had smiled politely and said nothing, but now, alone in her office, she stared at the image. At Hale kneeling next to a small girl. At the genuine smile on his usually stern face. Someone in the comments had posted a photo of a handwritten letter. Rebecca zoomed in, reading the careful, childlike handwriting. Her assistant knocked. "Miss Chen, your 2 o'clock is here." Rebecca held up a finger. "Wait." She opened the bottom drawer of her filing cabinet. The one where she kept things she meant to deal with but never quite got around to. And there, near the back, exactly where she'd put it months ago, was a wrinkled envelope with a child's handwriting. Her hands shook slightly as she pulled it out. The letter inside was personalized, specific to her. A girl named Maya, who wanted to be a doctor. A plea that felt personal in a way form letters never did. "You make medicine that helps people. Maybe you remember what it's like to want to help people." Rebecca Chen, who'd built a pharmaceutical empire, who'd fought her way up from poverty, felt tears burn her eyes. She made 2 phone calls, one to cancel her afternoon, one to her driver asking for the address of New Dawn Relief Center. That same Thursday, across the country in San Francisco, David Park was having a different kind of reckoning. His 16-year-old son had forwarded him the photo with a text, "This the guy you got a letter from." David had been in a meeting. He'd typed back, "What letter?" His son, "The one from the kid. You told me about it like 6 months ago. You were annoyed about getting random mail." David felt his stomach drop. He excused himself from the meeting. In his office, he searched through emails, trying to remember when he'd mentioned this to his son. Finally found it, a forwarded scan from his assistant, asking if he wanted to respond to unsolicited charity request. He'd told her to file it. Mentioned it to his son that night at dinner as an example of how people tried to get money from successful people. His son had asked, was it a real kid? David had shrugged, probably someone who works there writing on behalf of the organization. Now looking at the photo of Nathan Hale with those children, David wasn't so sure. He called his assistant. "That letter from a children's home. From earlier this year. Find it." 2 hours later, he was reading Amina's words about a boy named Isaiah who loved to draw. He forwarded the letter to his son with a text, "You were right, I was wrong. I'm going to fix this." His son replied with a single emoji. On Friday morning, in Chicago, James Morrison was eating breakfast when his wife set her tablet down in front of him. "You need to see this," she said. It was an article about Nathan Hale, about a photo that had gone viral, about a children's home called New Dawn. "So," James said, though something in his wife's expression told him this mattered. "You got a letter from a place like that. Months ago, remember?" James barely remembered. He got hundreds of requests. His assistant handled all of it. "Why does this matter?" he asked. His wife looked at him with an expression he'd seen before, the one that said she was disappointed but not surprised. "Because this man actually went. He actually helped, and you didn't even open your letter." James felt defensive. "I donate millions through the foundation to organizations your accountant chooses, for tax purposes." She stood up. "I'm not fighting about this, I'm just saying, maybe you should find that letter. Read it. Think about it." She left the room. James sat there for a long moment, then he called his office. I need you to go through archived correspondence. Find anything from a children's home or relief center from the past year. In Boston, Charles Westbrook saw the photo during his daughter's birthday dinner on Saturday night. They were at an expensive restaurant. His daughter, 15, was scrolling through her phone when she suddenly went quiet. "You okay?" Charles asked. She looked up at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Have you seen this?" She showed him the photo of Nathan Hale. "Yeah, I saw something about it. Good PR move." "It's not PR, Dad. He's been going there for weeks. No one knew about it until this photographer accidentally found him." She scrolled through more articles. Someone posted a letter from a little girl asking for help. He actually went. "Good for him," Charles said, wanting to get back to dinner. His daughter set her phone down. "Didn't you get a letter like that? You told Mom someone was trying to guilt trip you for money." Charles vaguely remembered. Months ago, he'd thrown it away, annoyed by the obvious manipulation. "It's not the same thing," he said. His daughter looked at him for a long moment. "No, I guess it's not." He actually cared. The dinner was quiet after that. Week 2, the next wave. By the start of the second week, 4 people had already made their way to New Dawn. Rebecca Chen arrived first, on Friday afternoon. She came with a check, with medical supplies from her warehouse, and with a heart full of regret. Caroline was overwhelmed. Nathan had been helping, but this was different. This was validation that maybe Amina's impossible plan was actually working. David Park arrived on Monday, his car packed with computer equipment. He met Nathan in the yard, the two tech competitors shaking hands awkwardly before bonding over their shared lateness. James Morrison came on Tuesday, bringing an architect and a contractor. He walked through the building with the careful eye of someone who built things for a living, making notes, asking questions, promising to return with plans. Charles Westbrook came on Wednesday, alone, without the photographer his PR team had wanted him to bring. He brought books for Sophie and an apology for being late. The photo of Nathan had given the others permission. Permission to care. Permission to deviate from their carefully managed public images. Permission to be human. But not everyone came for pure reasons. In Austin, Maria Cortez saw the photo and immediately called her PR team. "We need to do something like this. Find me a charity. Something with kids. Good optics." Her teenage daughter, overhearing the conversation, was horrified. "Mom, that's not why he's doing it. Sweetie, everything successful people do is strategic. He's just better at hiding it." But her daughter's disappointment stuck with her. That night, Maria found her own letter from Amina, unopened still in her inbox, where her assistant had forwarded it months ago. She read it 3 times. In the morning she called her assistant. "Cancel my Thursday meetings, all of them." "Ma'am, you have the investor. Cancel them." "I need to go to a children's home." "For the photo op?" "No," Maria said quietly. "For me." She arrived at New Dawn on Thursday afternoon, her daughter beside her. No photographers, no press, just them and several boxes of books. In Seattle, Thomas Bradley came because his wife insisted. He dismissed the letter when it arrived, assumed it was spam or manipulation. But after seeing the photo of Nathan Hale, after watching his wife's disappointment when he'd explained why he'd ignored it, he'd finally read Amina's words. He came on Friday with educational software and a commitment to fund a computer lab. But more than that, he came with humility, ready to admit he'd been wrong. By Friday evening of the second week, 9 of the 15 had made their way to New Dawn. Weeks 3 and 4, the last 6, the remaining 6 took longer. Jennifer Wu from Silicon Valley came in week 3, prompted by a phone call from her brother who'd seen the photo and confronted her about the letter she'd ignored. "You've become exactly what you hated," he'd told her. "Someone so successful they forgot where they came from." She came on a Tuesday, prepared to write a check and leave quickly. Instead, she spent 3 hours with Isaiah, looking at his drawings, remembering her own brother's crushed dreams. Patricia Nelson, who ran a major retail chain, came in week 3 as well. She'd kept her letter in her briefcase for months, meaning to look at it, never finding the time. After seeing 9 of her fellow CEOs make the journey, she felt the weight of her own avoidance. Michael Torres, an entertainment industry CEO, came in week 4. He'd thrown away his letter initially, then spent weeks watching the story unfold online with growing guilt. He finally drove to New Dawn on a Wednesday, unsure if he was too late to matter.
The last three, Andrew Kim, Sarah Washington, and Robert Hayes, all arrived during the final week of the month. Andrew, a finance CEO, came because his board member had gently suggested that being the only person from the magazine list who hadn't responded was not a good look. Sarah came because her mother, watching the news coverage, had asked her, "Did you get a letter too? Why haven't you gone?" Robert came last, on a Friday afternoon. The only one of the 15 who came truly angry, angry at himself, angry at the guilt, angry at the way one photograph had upended his carefully controlled life. By the end of 4 weeks, all 15 had made their way to New Dawn. Some came for the right reasons, some came for the wrong ones, some came confused about their reasons entirely. But they all came. The gathering, it was a coincidence that they all ended up at New Dawn on the same evening in late January. Nathan had been there since Wednesday morning. Rebecca had stopped by after a facility tour in the city. David was teaching an online coding session to Marcus. Charles was reading mysteries with Sophie. Maria had brought her daughter to help with homework tutoring. Others arrived throughout the afternoon, each surprised to find the others already there. By 6 o'clock, all 15 of them were crowded into the common room of New Dawn, looking at each other with something between amazement and embarrassment. Caroline made coffee and tea. She moved through the room with the practiced efficiency of someone used to making do with limited resources, but her hands were shaking slightly. A month ago, she'd been preparing to tell the children that New Dawn was closing. Now 15 of the most powerful business leaders in the country were sitting in her common room. "This is surreal," Maria said, breaking the silence. "A month ago, most of us had never met. A month ago, I thought Nathan Hale was a robot," David added. Nathan threw a wadded napkin at him, and several people laughed, nervous laughter, but laughter nonetheless. "So what now?" Rebecca asked. The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. "Now we figure out what we're actually doing here," Nathan said. "Beyond individual acts of charity, beyond guilt or good publicity. Some of us came because we genuinely wanted to help," Jennifer said, glancing at Nathan. "Some of us came because we saw others coming and didn't want to look bad." Charles shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He'd been in the second category, and everyone knew it. "Does it matter why we came?" Sarah asked. "We're here now." "It matters," Nathan said firmly. "Because if we're just here to feel better about ourselves, to assuage guilt, then we'll lose interest when the next crisis demands our attention. But if we're here because we understand that this is actually our responsibility," he trailed off, looking around the room. "Then we need something sustainable," Rebecca finished. "Not just individual donations. A real structure. A foundation," James said. He was a practical man, used to turning ideas into reality, with proper oversight. "Real funding. Long-term commitment." "How long-term are we talking?" Andrew asked carefully. He'd been the second to last to arrive, still uncertain about the whole situation. "Years," Nathan said. "Maybe decades. Real change doesn't happen quickly." The room went quiet. These were people who ran companies, managed billions, had schedules planned months in advance. Long-term commitment to anything outside their own empires was rare. "I'm in," Rebecca said, breaking the silence. "Whatever it takes." "Me too," David added. One by one, they agreed. Even the ones who'd come reluctantly. Even the ones who'd come for the wrong reasons initially. "We'll need lawyers," James said. "Articles of incorporation. Bylaws. A mission statement. Let's start now." Nathan pulled out a notepad. "What's our mission?" They spent 2 hours crafting it, debating every word, making sure it captured not just what they were doing but why they were doing it. The New Dawn Foundation exists to ensure that every child in the foster care and group home system has access to safety, education, and opportunity. We commit not just our resources, but our time, our expertise, and our sustained attention to creating lasting change. "That last part is important," Amina said from the doorway. Everyone turned. She'd been watching from the hallway, as she often did, observing these powerful adults try to figure out how to do something meaningful. "Which part?" Nathan asked, gesturing for her to come in. Amina walked into the room. "Sustained attention, that's what we need. Not visits, not checks, people who stay." She looked around at the 15 faces. "Mr. Hale comes every Wednesday. Miss Chen calls Maya every Sunday to check on her homework. Mr. Park is teaching Isaiah programming twice a week. That matters more than the big stuff, the showing up. Rebecca felt tears on her face. She wasn't alone. Several of the others were crying too. Can I say something? Amina asked. Always, Nathan said. Thank you for coming. Even if you came late. Even if you came because everyone was watching. Thank you for coming at all. Charles looked down at his hands. Maria closed her eyes. Andrew shifted uncomfortably. Some of you came because you really wanted to help. Amina continued, her voice soft but clear. Some of you came because you were embarrassed not to. Some of you came because your kids asked why you hadn't. I know all that. She let the words settle. But here's what I learned from writing those letters. People are complicated. You can do the right thing for the wrong reason, and it's still the right thing. What matters is that you're here now. What matters is what you do next. She looked at each of them in turn. So thank you. And please don't forget about us when the cameras go away. When it's not exciting anymore. When it's just work. We won't, Rebecca promised, her voice thick with emotion. I swear we won't. None of us will, Nathan added. The others nodded, some more convincingly than others. Amina studied them for a moment. This small 10-year-old girl, looking at 15 powerful adults, seeing them more clearly than they saw themselves. Okay, she said finally. I believe you. The room exhaled. The plane touched down at the regional airport on a clear September morning. Rebecca Chen gathered her briefcase and carry-on, nodding goodbye to the flight attendants, who'd recognized her. She'd been flying to this airport once a month for 3 years now. The New Dawn Foundation board meetings were held here, in the city where it all started, at the original New Dawn building that now served as headquarters. Her driver was waiting. They made the familiar route through town, past the gentrifying neighborhoods where coffee shops were replacing check-cashing places, toward the outskirts where New Dawn had always been. But not to the old building. Not today. Today was the opening of the new center. The New Dawn stood on 5 acres of purchased land, designed by James Morrison's firm to look nothing like an institution. It had dormitories that felt like bedrooms, a real kitchen where kids could learn to cook, a computer lab David Park had personally designed, and an art studio for students like Isaiah, who was now 17 and heading to RISD on a full scholarship. The original building still stood too, renovated but preserved. That's where the foundation operated from now. Offices where Caroline managed a staff of 12, where lawyers drafted policies, where social workers coordinated with 62 partner facilities across 20 states. Rebecca's car pulled into the already crowded parking lot. Over 400 people were here, donors, board members, politicians who wanted to be associated with success, press covering the feel-good story. But mostly children. Kids from New Dawn, and from other facilities the foundation supported. Kids who were living proof that sometimes, when you ask for help, someone actually answers. Rebecca made her way through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting congratulations for the foundation's success. She'd learned to accept credit gracefully, even though she knew the truth that she'd almost thrown away Amina's letter, that she'd come late and for the wrong reasons initially, that she was still trying to earn the second chance she'd been given. She found Nathan near the new building, talking with a group of donors. He saw her and waved her over. Big day, he said, the biggest. She looked at the building, at the children exploring the new facilities. Hard to believe it's been 3 years. Sometimes feels longer, Nathan admitted. Sometimes feels like yesterday. They stood together in comfortable silence, these two CEOs who'd been strangers 3 years ago and were something like family now. David approached with Marcus, who'd grown 6 inches and gained confidence to match. Marcus wanted to show you something, David said. Marcus pulled out his phone, showing them an acceptance letter. Not just any acceptance, a full-ride scholarship to MIT's engineering program. Marcus, that's incredible, Rebecca said, genuine pride in her voice. Mr. Bradley wrote one of my recommendations, Marcus said, referring to Thomas Bradley, who'd been mentoring him for 2 years. And Mr. Hale gave me my first real internship. So, he trailed off, suddenly emotional. Nathan pulled him into a hug. You did this. We just opened doors. You're the one who walked through them. Rebecca watched the interaction, remembering the 13-year-old who'd been hunched over a broken radio, barely making eye contact. Now he was going to MIT. Now he had a future that had seemed impossible 3 years ago. Caroline's voice came through the speakers, calling everyone to gather for the ceremony. They made their way to the seating area. Rebecca found herself sitting between Nathan and Maria, with the other foundation board members scattered throughout the crowd. All 15 of them had come. Even Robert Hayes, who still wasn't entirely comfortable with the whole situation, but who'd kept showing up anyway. Even Andrew Kim, who'd learned that being uncomfortable wasn't the same as being wrong. Caroline welcomed everyone, her voice steady, despite the obvious emotion. She introduced board members, thanked donors, acknowledged the political leaders who'd helped navigate permits and regulations. Then she introduced Amina. 3 years ago, a 10-year-old girl did something extraordinary. She didn't wait for adults to fix her problem. She didn't assume someone else would step up. She wrote 15 letters to people she'd never met, asking them to remember what it felt like to need help. Caroline paused, looking out at the crowd. 14 of those people almost didn't come. They were busy, they were successful. They had important things to do, but one person did come. And then slowly, the others followed. And now, 3 years later, we're standing here at a facility that helps not just these children, but thousands of children, across 20 states. She gestured to the side of the stage. I'd like to introduce the person who started all of this. Amina. Amina was 13 now, no longer the small 10-year-old who'd written those desperate letters. She'd grown taller, her voice steadier, but her eyes still held that quality of seeing people clearly, of understanding what mattered.
She walked to the microphone in a blue dress Rebecca had helped her pick out, note cards in her hands. When I was 10, she began, I wrote 15 letters to CEOs I'd seen in a magazine. I didn't know if anyone would read them. I didn't know if anyone would care. I just knew I had to try. She paused, looking out at the crowd, finding the faces of the 15 founders. 14 of those people almost didn't come. They got my letters and filed them away or never opened them at all. They were busy. They were successful. They had important things to do. Rebecca felt herself tense. She knew what was coming. But then something happened. Someone took a picture, and suddenly everyone was watching. And those 14 people realized they'd made a mistake. Amina set down her note cards. Some of you probably think they came because they were embarrassed, because they didn't want to look bad. And maybe that's true for some of them. Maybe that's true for all of them at first. Charles, sitting with Sophie beside him, shifted in his seat. David looked at his hands. Maria closed her eyes briefly. But here's what I learned. Amina continued, her voice gentler now. It doesn't matter why you start, it matters if you stay. She gestured to the building behind her. This place exists because 15 people decided to stay. They didn't just write checks and leave. They came back. Week after week, month after month. They learned our names. They asked about our homework. They showed up to our birthday parties and our graduations. They became part of our lives. Nathan felt something in his chest loosen, a tightness he hadn't known he was carrying. So yes, some of them came late. Some of them came for the wrong reasons, but they stayed for the right ones. And that's what I want to thank them for today. Not for being perfect, but for being human enough to change their minds, for being brave enough to admit they'd been wrong, for being stubborn enough to keep showing up even when the cameras went away. The audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. The foundation has helped thousands of kids in 3 years. But the most important thing it's done is show people that it's never too late to do the right thing, that even if you miss your first chance, there's always another one, that the world doesn't need perfect people. It just needs people who care enough to try. She looked directly at the 15 founders. So thank you, all of you, for being late and showing up anyway, for being flawed and choosing to be better, for reminding me and everyone here that sometimes the people who take the longest to arrive are the ones who stay the longest once they do. The applause started slowly, then built into something overwhelming. People stood. Many were crying openly. Nathan tried to hide that he was one of them, and failed completely. After the ceremony, after the speeches and the tours and the endless photographs, after most of the crowd had dispersed, a smaller group gathered in the yard of the original building. The 15 founders sat with Amina, Caroline, Marcus, Isaiah, Sophie, Maya, and Emma, who'd become Amina's best friend after writing to her 2 years ago, inspired by Amina's story. Can I tell you something? Charles said, breaking the comfortable silence. That first day I came here, with my photographer, I was furious when you turned me away. Nathan, I was being judgmental. Nathan admitted, but you were right, I wasn't here to help. I was here to be seen helping. Charles looked around the circle. I met Sophie that day. She asked if I liked to read. I said yes, even though I hadn't read a book for pleasure in probably 10 years. But she was so excited to tell me about her stories. He trailed off, looking at Sophie, who was now 10 and reading at a high school level. I went home and ordered 10 books from her list, started reading them, and I realized I'd forgotten what it felt like to do something just because it made you happy. Not because it was productive, not because it advanced some goal, just because. That's not a small thing, Rebecca said softly, remembering joy. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun begin to set behind the new building. Do you ever think about the letters we didn't answer? Jennifer asked suddenly. Not just Amina's letters, all the letters, all the people asking for help that we've ignored over the years. The question settled heavy in the evening air. All the time, James said quietly. I think about it all the time. Me too, Rebecca admitted. Sometimes I lie awake at night thinking about it. So what do we do? Maria asked. We can't answer every letter. We can't help everyone. No, Nathan agreed, but we can build systems that catch people before they fall through the cracks. We can make it so that kids like Amina don't have to write desperate letters to strangers, hoping for a miracle. Is that possible? Sophie asked. Can you really help everyone? Probably not, Nathan said honestly. But we can try, and trying is better than not trying. Amina leaned against Nathan's shoulder, comfortable in a way that spoke of 3 years of Wednesdays spent together. You know what the best part of all this is? She asked. What? Rebecca said. It's not the building, it's not the money or the programs, it's that you all became friends, became family. She was right. Over 3 years these 15 competitors had become collaborators. These 15 strangers had become something close to family. They had their disagreements, strong-willed people always did, but they showed up for each other now. They celebrated each other's successes, they supported each other through challenges. We should make this official, David said. An annual reunion, same time every year, right here. To remember what? Emma asked. To remember that we're not perfect, Rebecca said. That we almost didn't come. That change is possible, even when it seems impossible. To remember that kids like Amina exist, Nathan added, and that they deserve better than hoping strangers will care. To remember that being late isn't the same as being absent. Maria said softly. They raised their cups of lemonade. Caroline always made lemonade for these gatherings. To remembering, they said together. As evening deepened into night, people began to leave. One by one they hugged Amina, thanked Caroline, promised to see each other at the next board meeting. Rebecca was last. She pulled Amina aside, away from the others. I need to tell you something, Rebecca said. I almost threw away your letter. My assistant had it marked for the trash. I pulled it out at the last second and put it in a drawer. And for months, every time I opened that drawer, I saw it. And I thought, I should read that. But I never did. Not until I saw Nathan's photo and felt ashamed of myself. But you kept it, Amina said simply. I kept it. Rebecca knelt so she was at eye level with Amina, though the girl had grown enough that it wasn't as dramatic a height difference as it once was. You didn't just save New Dawn. You saved me. You saved all of us. We were drowning in our own success and didn't even know it. You threw us a lifeline in the form of a letter, and even though we almost didn't grab it, we did. Eventually, I just wrote some letters, Amina said. You did more than that. You believed we were better than we'd shown ourselves to be, and somehow, that belief made it true. Rebecca hugged her tight. Thank you for not giving up on us, even when we'd given up on ourselves. After Rebecca left, only Amina, Nathan and Caroline remained on the steps of the old building. Big day, Caroline said. The biggest. Amina agreed. You did good with your speech, Nathan told her. Really good, I meant it, about you all being late but staying. That matters more than being first. Nathan looked at her with the fondness of someone who'd watched a child grow into something remarkable. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise, Amina said with a small smile. You just took a while to notice. Caroline laughed. She's got you there. They sat in comfortable silence, watching lights come on in the new building across the way, thinking about everything that had changed and everything that had stayed the same. Nathan, Amina asked after a while. Do you still think about Eli?
every day. But it doesn't hurt the same way anymore. What's different? I think he'd be proud of what we built here, what you started, and knowing that makes missing him easier somehow, like he's part of it, even though he's gone. He is part of it, Amina said firmly, because he's part of you, and you're part of this. Nathan pulled her close. This girl who'd saved him without knowing she was doing it, who'd reminded him that wealth without humanity was just numbers on a screen. What are you going to do now? He asked. You've got the new building, the foundation is running smoothly, you're starting high school next week. The world is pretty much open to you. Amina thought about it. I think I'm going to keep writing letters. To who? To everyone. To kids who need to hear that someone cares. To adults who forgot how to care. To anyone who'll listen. She looked up at him. Is that okay? It's more than okay, Nathan said. It's perfect. Caroline stood up, stretching. I hate to break up this moment, but it's past Amina's bedtime. School tomorrow. Amina groaned but stood up. She hugged Nathan good night. A quick fierce hug that said everything words couldn't. See you Wednesday, she asked. Nathan still came every Wednesday, a standing appointment he never missed. Wouldn't miss it, he said. As Caroline and Amina walked inside, Nathan sat alone in the yard for a few more minutes. He looked at the painted wall, faded now, after 3 years of weather, but still visible, still beautiful in its imperfection. He thought about the letter that had changed everything, about the girl who'd been brave enough to hope, about the 14 CEOs who'd come late but had learned to stay. And he thought about Eli, his friend from Riverside, who lived on in every child the foundation helped, every life they changed, every hope they kept alive. We did it, Nathan whispered to the memory of his friend. We actually did it. Then he got in his car and drove to the airport, feeling lighter than he'd felt in 30 years. The original New Dawn building became a museum eventually, preserved as the place where everything changed. Visitors walked through the rooms, saw the photographs on the walls, read the letters displayed behind glass, 15 letters from a 10-year-old girl that had somehow changed the world. But that night it was still just a building where children slept and dreamed, where Caroline still made breakfast every morning, where hope lived in the small spaces between the walls, and on a desk by a window sat new letters. Children from other centers, inspired by Amina's story, writing their own words into the world, hoping someone would hear. Every single one would get a response. Amina made sure of it, because she knew now what she'd only hoped before, that everyone deserves to be heard. That every story matters, that the simple act of reaching out, whether you're 10 years old in a group home or a successful CEO with a billion-dollar company, can change everything. Not because of magic or miracles, but because of something simpler and more powerful, the human capacity to care, if we just remember how. And sometimes all it takes is a letter, and the courage to open it, even when you're late, to help us remember.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.